I'm Laura Lyons from Data Driven Detroit, and I'll be speaking to you alongside my colleague Jacob in a moment about GIS at Data Driven Detroit. So just to give you a quick update on what Data Driven Detroit is, we are a data intermediary that works in the city that tries to provide data to residents, nonprofits, philanthropic industries. And what our goal is to really make data accessible. And that can mean two things. That means one, actually have the data so that you can access it. But then the other element of that accessibility is being able to understand the data. So a lot of times we're doing some kind of data workshops or teaching people how to use data. We also provide free services to the community for under 2 hours of data work, because we realize that a lot of organizations and residents don't have the expertise or the time and resources it takes to do some of this data analysis work. Our data can be used, and we work with tons of different types of partners and clients. We work with universities, residents, community organizations, nonprofits, the government. You name it, we've worked with them, because everyone at their core wants to make informed decisions, right? And so our job at D3 is to provide information so that other people can make those decisions in an informed way. I want to run you through one project that we did for Forgotten Harvest, which is a local food bank in the area of Metro Detroit. A couple of years ago, they had approached us about the idea that they wanted to be more strategic in who they reached. So previously, what they had done is they had always set up their services and gone into a community when that community had contacted them saying, we need more food resources. We need, our community is a little food insecure, meaning not having those resources to access food. So previously, they would just wait for a phone call. The phone call would come in. They would head to that location. And they decided that it doesn't really meet the needs of all people that they think they could meet. So what they wanted to do was try and identify areas that maybe don't have anybody calling on their behalf to bring that food into their neighborhood. So we created a food insecurity index to try and identify areas where there were populations that didn't have access to food. Some of the, like food banks or grocery stores, or even mass transit to get to those resources. So we were able to do this index using GIS as well as some other background platforms, and we created this index that would show things like the census tract in Novi. Now, previously, we Forgotten Harvest had not thought of using identifying areas like Novi for places where they would need to set up their services. But what they found in this particular census tract, it had a high index score of food insecurity, meaning that they didn't have those resources. They didn't have food in an accessible way. So Forgotten Harvest started working in that census tract and providing those services to those residents. What our analysis was able to find with using GIS is that there are a lot of apartment complexes in that area. So the density of that population is pretty high. So, and then you have a population that you do want to meet their food needs. So this map that you're looking at right now is of the city of Detroit was trying to create this community engagement ordinance, saying that anytime there was a development happening, some type of project, the residents within 300 feet of that, which you can see that smaller circle, they would let those residents know about the project. Well, community development organizations and local nonprofits were kind of understanding that 300-foot circle around that development area is not much space. Like, there would not be a lot of residents that would know about it, but it would affect the whole, the couple blocks outside of that. So what we did was reproduce this map for some clients of ours, the nonprofits, and then they were able to take this map to a city council meeting and show them the difference between, you need to engage these residents. They need to know what's happening the block next to them. Just because they're one block over doesn't mean it doesn't affect them. So here we have some civic engagement opportunities of how to use maps and GIS. We have another in this next map, just looking at quick stories of ways of like, this is race and ethnicity the predominant race and ethnicity in each census tract for cities like Detroit and Saginaw. And right off the bat with Saginaw, you can tell that, east of the river, we have that Black non-Hispanic population, where to the west of the river, you have that white non-Hispanic. So the story jumps out at you, right? And it's a great element of having these visuals when you're, trying to fight for something, when you're trying to inform people of these stories that are easy to interpret, which is one that I really like about maps. This is actually an interactive map that you can't tell, but all of the dots that are on the map are school locations. And you can click on these school locations and find out their immunization rate. And this was pre-COVID, so just the normal CDC recommended vaccines. And then you also can layer that data together with some race and ethnicity data so that you can kind of look at different neighborhoods of that race and ethnicity and understand the schools and find out if there needs to be an immunization push, if more education is needed, that kind of thing. As well as, besides these interactive maps, we've done maps that just kind of tell the story between Detroit and then the metro region. So any area that's in orange is actually showing that the population in that area their life expectancy is below the national average, and anything in blue is that the life expectancy for that population is above the national average. And you can see Detroit is pretty much all orange, right? But then when we compare that to the areas outside of Detroit, we can see that there is that vast difference. And this was, used by one of our partner organizations to really identify, just in terms of their health initiative and what we can do to, extend that life expectancy in Detroit.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jacob Yesh-Brochstein. I am a data analyst at Data-Driven Detroit, and I've been working for D3 for about 2.5 years. My GIS journey started back when I was in high school, just actually after I graduated in the summertime before I started college. And I realized when I was volunteering at my local environmental center, the Environmental Interpretive Center at University of Michigan Dearborn, that I learned that it wasn't always an environmental area, like an environmental research area. It used to be an apple orchard and some farm fields. And I was just really curious one day, what parts used to be the apple orchard? What parts used to be the farm field? So I just wanted to really put it on a Google Earth, to be honest. And I put the images on my computer, and I tried to get them on Google Earth, and I found out I couldn't do it. So I just started Googling, playing around, and I found out there are some programs that could help me do that. And those programs were all GIS programs. And that's really when I got started with GIS. So I played around a while while I was volunteering over that summer. And then when I started attending the university, I decided, hey, I really like this. I might take a class or two to brush up my skills and learn more. So I started taking classes there. As you can see from my one of my first projects, this mapping vacancy in public schools in Detroit, I actually cited Data-Driven Detroit in my map. So I used some of their data, and not knowing that only 3 or 4 years later, I would be hired by Data-Driven Detroit for doing the very thing I was doing in that class. Eventually, I started getting more advanced in my GIS abilities, and I started coding, and I really learned that I could really work on doing the best work possible if I applied coding and GIS together. So I started using it in my projects, coding in my projects, and I soon was able to start doing some really cool stuff with GIS that I never thought I would be able to do. So this one project, I was able to calculate how much centimeters of ash would fall on Seattle if Mount Rainier erupted. So soon I was taking some classes involving being active in mapping. So you doing stuff with your maps. So the course I took involved mapping property in Detroit and helping neighborhood associations reach residents who are struggling with housing costs. And I really enjoyed that class, and I got, from all my previous experience, got pretty good at making some maps. So as a student, I was hired by the university um, to work on making these maps for people the university is partnering with, and organizations the university is partnering with. And so while I was a student, I was getting paid by the university, and I could use that money to pay, some of my tuition. And it was a really great experience. And I highly recommend it for anyone who's at a university to look out for student employment opportunities. After I was employed by the university for a few years, I was coming up to my graduation. I applied with Data Driven Detroit. And because I had all this experience working as a student researcher at the university, it really helped, I believe, in my hiring. And yeah, that's how I got to where I am today.
I have loved maps since, I was a kid playing on, a big painted map that was on my playground at school. So I was always finding a way to take quizzes on maps, on, understanding where countries were, where cities were. Then I started to realize, once I was going into college at Michigan State for an undergrad in elementary education, that they had a minor in geography. And my thought was, I love looking at maps. I love the way that maps can display something visually and tell a story that sometimes reports and tables and numbers can't. So I had a minor in geography, which allowed me to continue to look at maps and explore GIS and start making my own, really to allow that context of anytime you're talking about a place, there's context that goes along with that, of what type of people live there, of what type of trees are there. There's the environmental aspect, there's the municipality, the government aspect, there's education, there's all these different industries and sectors that really use data that in a visual way, and GIS allows you to do all of those abilities. And then I went on to teach elementary school for a couple of years, and when I wanted to do a career change, I've always felt like the most successful I've been was when I was doing something I liked, and I was just intrinsically interested in it, and that was always maps. So my thought was, I'm going to go with something that I'm interested in and find a way to do it for a living. So that led me to get my master's at Georgia State University in geography, with a concentration in urban geography. And after graduating, I worked for a company that looked at household travel surveys. So understanding how people traveled through their city, what form of transportation they took, where they were going, that kind of household study. From there, I worked for an ad agency that focused on my mapping would focus on their target audience. Where should they place their billboards? What kind of print ads should they take out? Who are they really targeting with their advertising? And then from that, I kind of went back to I began my role at Data Driven Detroit as a project lead and senior GIS analyst, where I'm now working with data that spans, education and civic engagement and race and ethnicity. And, we work with property data like Jacob has talked about. And so it really allows for so many different stories to be told visually, which I think is the easiest ways to understand a story in context. So I know that Jacob and I are super excited about GIS and data in general. And at Data Driven Detroit, we're always looking to, provide that accessible data. So if you do have any data questions, we really encourage you to reach out at our website. You can fill out a form on there for Ask D3, our program that's free to the community, or just email us at askd3 at datadrivendetroit.org. So thanks for joining us.